Welcome everyone to another installment of the Eye on Education webinar series. I'm your host, Ben Shaberman, Senior Director of Scientific Outreach. And for the episode for today, I'll be providing an overview of ClinicalTrials.gov. It's a website that lists all the clinical trials underway in the US and many overseas. So to start this webinar, I will be providing you with just some general information and facts about the website. Then in the second part of the webinar, we'll actually take a relatively brief tour of clinicaltrials.gov so you can get a better understanding of how to navigate it and what the look and feel is like. So let's get started. So again, clinicaltrials.gov lists virtually all the clinical trials underway in the US and many outside the US for not only retinal diseases, which is what most of us are interested in, but really all diseases and conditions. And this site is hosted by the National Institutes of Health, NIH. So it's a publicly funded site ultimately. It's funded by US taxpayers. Now, like other search websites, because ultimately clinicaltrials.gov is a site that you search, it's sometimes easy to find what you're looking for and other times not so much. It helps if you can use unique keywords to narrow down search results. It helps to have some experience with using like the Google search engine or the Yahoo search engine. And it just takes a little practice to get used to using the different search functions and tools. Now, the information that's provided on clinicaltrials.gov is provided by the clinical trial sponsors. And usually the information is relatively accurate, but it may not be perfect. It's up to the sponsor to ensure accuracy, and frankly, they don't always do that. And there can be some gaps and missing information. But the good news is, for most trials, there's contact information so you can reach out to the sponsor if you have questions or you're interested in potentially participating in the trial. Now, I would say that clinicaltrials.gov has really been designed for professionals, for scientists and doctors. I think many people without a science background can use it, but sometimes the information, the data can be a little technical and a little cryptic. So keep that in mind. And again, the more you use it, the more you learn about it and understand what the different fields and terms may be. So one important thing to keep in mind, just because a trial is on clinicaltrials.gov does not mean it's authorized or regulated by the FDA. A vast majority on the website are, but there are some studies that have been able to go through a loophole and get listed on clinicaltrials.gov. Now, there's a field toward the bottom of each clinical trial listing that will tell you if the study is FDA regulated or not. If it says yes, of course it is. If it says no, then you know for certain that the trial is not FDA monitored. Now, another sign that a trial may not be FDA regulated and may be not one you should consider participating in is if the clinic or the vendor want you to pay for the treatment. You should never really be paying for the therapy if it is in a clinical trial. And I've already mentioned that there is contact information for the different trials. This is probably one of the most helpful aspects of clinicaltrials.gov, so you can reach out to the trial sponsors to learn more. And one thing I learned relatively recently after using clinicaltrials.gov for many years is there is a glossary of terms. Who knew? So if you have questions about what a particular term means, you can go to that glossary. And that glossary is on the home page toward the bottom of the screen. Now, what I'm not going to do today as part of this training is give you a general overview of what a clinical trial is. That's a whole separate training, but I do have that training as part of this Eye on Education series. It's a video, and you can access it probably in the same area of the Foundation's website that you're looking at this video. Now, if you just want a listing of all the clinical trials underway in our space, there is a table on the Foundation's website at fightingblindness.org. If you click on the Research tab and then pick in the pull-down menu Clinical Trials Pipeline, you can find that pipeline chart. A lot of people like looking at that for just a general overview of the trials that are currently underway. So let's take a look for a few moments at the ClinicalTrials.gov website. Okay, so here's the home page for ClinicalTrials.gov. It's pretty simple and straightforward. You basically have three fields that you can search on. The first field that I'm pointing to here is where you select a disease or a condition, and you can just start typing in a condition to bring up the keyword that you're interested in searching on. So I am just searching on, for example, retinitis pigmentosa, and there it fills it in. I type in the first few letters of retinitis pigmentosa, and you can fill that in. Just about all the diseases in our space are going to be listed under this disease field. If you're interested in searching on other terms, maybe a gene or a researcher, you can do that as well. Just as an example, I'm going to type in the gene GUCY2D. That happens to be an LCA gene. I hit the search button, and voila, here is the listing for a gene therapy for that particular gene. This is a trial that's been launched by Etsena Therapeutics. Now, I picked this gene for this webinar because I knew there was a listing for it on ClinicalTrials.gov. There may be other genes, other situations that you won't get a listing for. So let's start over and go back. So as an example, I want to do a search on Stargardt disease to see what comes up there. So I begin typing in Stargardt disease. As you just saw, the field gets filled in. I hit the search button. And at the top here, it says 40 studies found for Stargardt disease. Now, if you're keeping track of research in our space, that really sounds like a lot. We have about 40 trials for all diseases. But what ClinicalTrials.gov does, it archives all the studies throughout the last several decades that have been conducted for Stargardt disease. Now, most of us, when we're searching ClinicalTrials.gov, are interested in trials that are active, that are recruiting, or might soon be recruiting. So there's an important sidebar here on the left where you can narrow down the search to pick trials that aren't quite recruiting yet, that are recruiting, that are enrolling by invitation. Sometimes that's the way trials are filled, or trials that are active and not recruiting. So I have selected all those options. I'm not going to include trials that have been completed, suspended, terminated, etc. So I hit the apply button, and there it's narrowed down my search results to 15 trials. And again, this includes trials that are recruiting, will likely soon be recruiting, that are active, and enrolling by invitation only. So we have 15 trials here, and I'm just scrolling down. Now I'm going to choose a specific trial for an oral treatment that's been developed by Belite Bio. And I just want to say I am not picking this trial because I'm endorsing it in any way. I have no opinion on the trial. I just thought this was a good listing to show everyone what a trial listing actually contains and looks like. So I've selected this Stargardt disease therapy being developed by Belite Bio. And at the top, this green square here, or green rectangle, it gives you information about when this trial was first posted to ClinicalTrials.gov and when it was last updated. So I'm recording this in May of 2022, and you can see that the last update was May 6th, 2022. And that's good. That means that this trial site is being kept up to date. And if you happen to go to a trial where the last update was a few years ago, that's probably a telling sign that that trial is not active. So scrolling down, you can see the sponsor is Belite Bio. They provided information for this website. Scrolling down further, study description. This is for Stargardt disease. The drug is called tinlarebant, and you can see here that people might also get a placebo, or I should say there's a group of people in the trial that will get a placebo instead of the actual treatment. This is a placebo-controlled trial. On the right here, you can see it's phase 3, which is a pretty late phase. It's usually the phase before a trial sponsor will seek FDA approval. So if phase 3 goes well, often the sponsor will seek FDA approval. Scrolling down further, the study design, there will be 60 participants. It's randomized as to who will get the actual treatment or placebo. It's also masked, so neither the participant or the investigator giving out the drug know who's getting a placebo or the real treatment. Again, this is phase 3, and they're estimating the ultimate study completion date to be February 2025. I'm sure, or relatively sure, that they will come out with some results before then, but this is the estimated final study completion date. So that's information on study design. Scrolling down further, we have more on the treatment arms. And there are basically, for this particular trial, 2 arms. Some people will be getting the actual treatment, a 5 milligram tablet. Other people will be getting the placebo, not the active drug. Scrolling down further are the outcome measures. These are really, it's the primary outcome measure that will determine if a trial is succeeding or failing. And so the primary outcome measure for this trial is change in atrophic lesion size. So in Stargardt disease, in case you weren't aware, there is an area of degeneration, a lesion that's very visible in imaging that shows where cells have been lost. And so the change in this lesion size in the treatment group versus the placebo group will tell us whether this drug is working. And if there's a sufficient reduction in the growth of that lesion, then the treatment has a decent chance of getting FDA approval. That's what this phase 3 trial is looking at. So there are several other secondary outcome measures. I'm not going to go through these for the sake of time. They'll be doing other imaging. They'll look at best corrected visual acuity and so on. So scrolling down further, the ever important eligibility criteria. So this particular study is for adolescents, really. It's for kids and I guess young adults age 12 to 18. And they are enrolling both males and females. And here is more information on who is eligible for the study. Again, the person has to be 12 to 18 years old. They have to be clinically diagnosed with Stargardt disease and have at least one mutation in ABCA4, which is the gene normally associated with Stargardt disease. And there are other inclusion criteria. I'm not going to talk about them all for the sake of time. But there are also what we call exclusion criteria, which can keep people out of the study. And I want to note the first exclusion criterion, which is any ocular disease other than Stargardt at baseline that, in the opinion of the investigator, would complicate assessment of the treatment effect. So, for example, if somebody has a cataract or glaucoma or maybe some problems with their cornea, that's a situation that is likely going to exclude somebody from a trial. They want people that don't have any other issues that could complicate their vision or assessment of vision. So inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, both very important. And those are listed pretty sufficiently here on ClinicalTrials.gov. Then finally, contacts and locations. So this section is showing you how you can contact the trial site. And this, for this trial, they have both a phone number and an email address. And then the different locations for the trial are listed: California, Australia, Belgium, Germany, Hong Kong, Switzerland, and so on. Some of the trial sites are recruiting, others aren't. That's what it's telling us here when it says not yet recruiting or recruiting. Again, if someone has questions about enrollment, the best thing to do is to reach out to the trial sponsor for more information, again, through the telephone number or email address. So finally, scrolling down, I wanted to note that field that I mentioned in the earlier part of the presentation. It says studies a U.S. FDA regulated drug product, and here it's saying yes. So that means this trial is being monitored. It's been authorized by the FDA. If you ever see no for this, stay away from that trial. So that is my brief overview of ClinicalTrials.gov. Again, play around with it, practice. I've heard that you can use a screen reader if you have low vision. I have also heard that it might not be too easy to use ClinicalTrials.gov if you're using a screen reader, so you might need some help. But good luck in searching the site and learning about clinical trials. And thank you for your time for this episode.